What's up, guys? I am Andrew Erickson, aka the Props Prophet. Today I'm coming at you with my favorite player props for NFL Week 10. Let's dive in. But before we start with the player props, if you want a chance to win a premium one-year subscription to Betting Pros, your place to start betting smarter and not harder, all you have to do is subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right now, comment below in this video, and that is it. I'm announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Now, let's get to the best player props for NFL Week 10. Starting off, Austin Ekeler under 51.5 rushing yards. This one's over on FanDuel Sportsbook. So Ekeler has struggled to run the football this year. He's finished under 51.5 rushing yards in 4 straight games since returning from his injury to start the year. And Week 10 doesn't project to be much better. The Lions are allowing the second fewest rushing yards per game, 56.6 to opposing running backs. Only 2 running backs they have faced this year have surpassed 60 rushing yards on the ground against them. In the same matchup, I like Jared Goff over 33.5 passing attempts over on DraftKings. Every quarterback the Chargers have faced this season has gone over their projected passing yards prop. 5 of 7 have gone over their passing attempts prop. So I like the overs for both passing attempts and passing yards for Jared Goff against the pass funnel Los Angeles Chargers defense. He's gone over 33 attempts in 3 straight games, projected for 36 throws in Week 10. I like pairing Jared Goff with the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown, of course, and Jameson Williams receiving yards props really low this week. 15.5 yards over on DraftKings. Think a little single game parlay action with Jared Goff and some of his receivers is a good way to attack Lions and Chargers this weekend. Next up, Joe Mixon under 68.5 rushing yards, also on DraftKings minus 115. Look, Mixon has rushed for 68 plus yards only 2 times this year. 75% of the games he has flown under this rushing production. Texans are allowing the league's third lowest yards per carry at 3.5 overall, just 3.3 yards per carry to running backs this season, 77.3 rushing yards per game. The projection has him listed for a meager 57.3 yards after he failed to hit 40 yards last week against a horrible Bills run defense. 16 carries per game at 3.3 yards per carry. That's not going to get Mixon anywhere close to this rushing yardage total. So I like the Mixon under this week. A lot of unders here on this prop card, and we're going to continue. George Pickens, under 3.5 receptions, minus 145 on DraftKings Sportsbook. So last week, Pickens finished with under 2. He only had 2 catches last week on 5 targets for -1 yards. He had a 17% target share. He almost scored, but was ruled out of bounds. He had 2 red zone targets. And overall, George Pickens is just tough to trust to get receptions with Deontay Johnson, the alpha target earner in this offense. If you just look at his fantasy finishes with Deontay Johnson in the lineup, wide receiver 51, wide receiver 19, wide receiver 45, and wide receiver 103. So he's only averaged a 17% target share with Deontay Johnson. He's averaging 3.25 catches per contest. That's putting him under 3.5 receptions. The Packers are a tougher matchup for opposing wide receivers. 7th best versus perimeter receivers, 7th best against receivers overall. And Pickens is not put in a place where he's getting easy catches. He owns the 3rd worst catch rate in the NFL at 53%. He is the 6th worst catchable target rate at 67%. Kenny Pickett is not putting the ball in places where George Pickens can actually come down with the catch. It's all sideline throws, toe tap grabs. It's like really tough for him to get to 4 catches. Looking at PFF, he ranks 65th among all wide receivers in fantasy points per route versus zone coverage. Green Bay runs zone coverage at a top 10 rate. Easy bet here. Take the under on George Pickens, 3.5 receptions. Same game, same team, but we're going over. Jaylen Warren over 7.5 rushing attempts. Minus 125 FanDuel Sportsbook. I like the Jaylen Warren here. 7.5 rushing attempts against a defense that ranks 3rd in run rate faced this season. Warren saw a season-high 11 carries last week as the team looks to get him more involved in the running game. Look, we know he's better than Najee Harris. I think the team's starting to kind of figure that out as well. They were going to see a bigger split, or a more of a split, I should say, with Warren getting more of the work of Najee. I think he's going to get over 7.5 rushing attempts here. He's projected for 9 carries in the Betting Pros prop bet cheat sheet. Over on Jaylen Warren, who Derek Brown, my colleague, thinks is going to have a massive game this week, potentially a career game. So over on the rushing attempts, sounds like a good bet to me. Another over here, Christian Watson over 36.5 receiving yards. I know we ladder bet Christian Watson a couple weeks back, and it didn't work out, but the number here, it's too low, guys. It's just too low at 36.5. The Steelers are allowing the league's 2nd highest explosive pass play rate Watson caught a deep ball last week. It was the air yards leader, but only drew 2 targets. Look, Christian Watson is getting the opportunities every single week to fly over 36.5 receiving yards. He only needs to catch 1 for him to get over this number because he has a very high average depth of target. I know he suffered an injury last week, but he's been off the injury report, so he should be fine. And it's just really hard to argue with the potential blow-up spot he has against this beatable Steelers secondary. So I'm going over on Christian Watson, 36.5 receiving yards. My favorite, boom or bust wide receiver overplay here is Rashid Shaheed. Over 30.5 receiving yards, minus 114 in FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, he leads the team in fantasy points per route run versus zone coverage this year. He's their primary zone beater. The Vikings run mostly zone coverage at a top 10 rate. The Vikings also rank 3rd in yards per game to opposing number 3 wide receivers, 4th in targets per game to opposing wide receiver 3s. So in the last 2 games, Shaheed has gone off. Road games in domes after failing to post 30 yards receiving. Rinse and repeat. It's a ladder bet spot for me. You better believe it. Shaheed has either finished with under 35 yards or gone over 63 yards in 9 games played this season. Simply put, when he goes over, he goes well over his projected total. So Shaheed plus 340 for an anytime touchdown as well. I love that in week 10. Next up, going to this Buccaneers-Titans game, Will Levis, over 30.5 passing attempts. So this line has actually moved since it opened at 29.5. I still think it's good at 30.5 passing attempts. The Buccaneers are a pass-funnel defense. They're facing an average of 37.5 passing attempts per game, and the Titans have shown more willingness to throw the ball with Will Levis under center. 29 attempts in back-to-back weeks while going over his pregame passing prop. So again, if you don't want to get the best value, you may have missed it. So I understand if you want to fade this bet just because the value is not necessarily as good as it was. But I just want to point it out. Will Levis is in a good spot here. And if you want to fade Levis necessarily, you can go with this other bet that I also like in this game. DeAndre Hopkins over 4.5 receptions. So it's a good pairing with this Levis prop. Look, D-Hop only has 4 catches in back-to-back games, but he's commanded an elite 23.5% target share and a 40% air yard share in Will Levis's last 2 starts. The projections have him for 5.5 catches. Looking at Tampa Bay's defense, they lead the NFL in yards allowed per game to wide receivers, 8th in targets per game to opposing number 1s. Also, as an additional play, I like the over on Titans slot wide receiver Kyle Phillips. Over 2.5 receptions, you can get at plus money odds and at 19.5 receiving yards. 4 catches in back-to-back games. Treylon Burks is going to miss this game with a concussion. Last 2 weeks, Phillips boasts a 22% target per route run. Brock Purdy over 244.5 passing yards. I'm backing the overs in terms of the 49ers passing game against an elite run Jaguars defense. Every quarterback the Jaguars have faced this season has gone over their projected passing yards total except for Kenny Pickett, who got injured in the game that he played. Purdy has thrown for over 240 passing yards in 62.5% of his games this season. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to know that his offense's best bet to win against this Jaguars defense is to attack it through the air. So stack it up with Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk over 65.5 receiving yards. Brandon Ayuk is going to go absolutely ballistic, go bonkers in this matchup against a very, very exploitable Jaguars secondary. So I like the passing game here for the 49ers. Maybe sprinkle some Deebo Samuel in there as well. Trey McBride, over 3.5 receptions. Look, he only had 1 target and 1 catch for 12 yards in the first half of last week's game with Clayton Tune at quarterback. But overall, the second-year tight end ended with 3 for 22 on 5 targets. He had 25% target share. He still has a very strong target share the last 2 weeks without Zach Ertz in the lineup. He ran a route on 63% of the dropbacks, played 69% of the snaps. So the usage is still there for Trey McBride, and now he's getting the massive upgrade with Kyler Murray coming in at quarterback. And the matchup against the Falcons is absolutely divine in Week 10. The Falcons are allowing the most catches and second most targets to tight ends this season. I like McBride's odds of scoring as well. Plus 210 for anytime touchdown, 11-1 for the first touchdown score. The Falcons have allowed 5 first touchdown scores through the air this season. So it might not take long for Trey McBride to find the end zone like him this week against the Atlanta Falcons at home. Same matchup, same game. Beon Robinson, over 55.5 rushing yards. Everybody hates Bijan. Oh my God, Arthur Smith hates Bijan. You know what? I love Bijan. I love Bijan this week, so I'm betting the over on his rushing yards prop. Look, aside from just last week, the Cardinals had allowed a running back to rush for at least 59 yards in every single game this season. I think it's that simple, folks. Bet the over on Bijan. Play him in fantasy. Play him in DFS. All the Bijan Robinson this week for me. And last but not least, definitely my favorite guy, I think, just playing in week 10. I'm super excited about him, so I'm just hoping that this injury that he popped up with on Thursday is nothing. DK Metcalf, over 63.5 receiving yards. Look, 100%, 9 out of 9 wide receiver ones have hit the over on their receiving prop against the Washington Commanders. The DK Metcalf explosion game is going to come because as bad as he's been and inconsistent, if you've owned him in fantasy or bet on him, he's gone over this number, 63.5, in 57% of his games, despite tough matchups and injuries. So I love his receiving yards prop. I also love him with the anytime touchdown at plus 145. Look, their defense that he's facing has allowed the second most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers this season. Metcalf is tied for 4th in the NFL in red zone targets, but has not scored since week 4. And conversely, I'm strongly fading Tyler Lockett. He's been on the injury report all year with a hamstring injury. He's gone over 59.5 receiving yards just twice all year, 25% hit rate. Metcalf's biggest totals have coincided with Lockett's worst games of the season. And Metcalf we trust, and Lockett we do not. DK Metcalf, big game coming. You'll love to see it. And that's going to tie a bow on my favorite player props for NFL Week 10. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, share with all your friends. And again, be sure to follow me, Andrew Erickson, over on the Betting Pros app where you can check out all of my picks for the upcoming week of NFL action. Tail them, fade them, do whatever you feel is right. And again, before you go, if you want a chance to win a premium 1-year subscription to Betting Pros, your place to start betting smarter and not harder, all you have to do is subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right now, comment below this video, and that is it. I'm announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Thanks for watching, and good luck in Week 10.